Business Stories live from the Sky Newsroom. Could the budget lead to an exodus of entrepreneurs? We've got an exclusive interview with the Brewdog founder, James Watts. China's GDP figures come in at over 4% as the UK Foreign Secretary arrives in Beijing to try and reset relations. And speculation grows that British pension funds could be forced into much greater investments here in the UK. A very good morning and welcome to Business Live with me, Darren McCaffrey. Pre-budget speculation is reaching fever pitch, at least in part because of leaks from the Treasury. Yesterday, the Institute for Public Policy Research said one of Rachel Reeves's tax raising options included increasing capital gains tax, but that would not lead to lower investment, slower growth or reduced entrepreneurship. But many disagree. And they include James Watt, who is the founder of the craft brewing producer Brewdog. Of course, been an enormous success over the last couple of years. He stepped down as a boss. He's involved in lots of other things, and he joins us now down the line. Very good morning to you, James. Let's just start, first of all, on what your objections are. Why do you think potentially increasing capital gains tax is a bad idea?
Well, thank you for having me. And firstly, I think the government have got such an unenviable task. They've been dealt a terrible hand. After 14 years of Conservative government, taxes have never been higher. We've never had more debt, and the level of services we receive for those taxes have never been worse. So they're in a very, very difficult situation. And my advice to them would be just don't make it worse. So an increase in capital gains tax, I think, is going to have so many bad consequences for the UK economy. And I think it's going to lead to less tax in general. Firstly, so many fantastic entrepreneurs, founders, job creators are simply going to leave the UK. We're going to see a mass exodus, especially those in the tech sector. Secondly, for me, this is going to lead to less tax overall. It's people who start businesses. They also pay national insurance, PAYE for their team, corporation tax. And we really need jobs. We need job creation. We need investment in our economy. We need economic growth. So it would be so anti-business and to disincentivize that, I think, is such a bad decision at this time. And finally, starting a business is so tough. I spend so much time with founders. 95% of businesses fail in the first 5 years. So what they're doing is incredibly difficult. They often work 7 days a week. They take very low wages. They put everything on the line, including their capital, to try and build something, to try and create something. So to increase the taxes on these people, the people that's going to drive the economic growth in their company at this time, I think it just leads to economic pain for the UK. I think it leads to less tax income, and it's completely the wrong thing to do at this moment in time.
Oh, OK, James, but let's start with where I think the government would argue they're coming from, which is that the public finances are not in a good state. They need to stabilise the economy, at least in the short term. They need to plug this hole they say exists. Do you accept that there is a problem with the public finances?
100%, there's a huge problem with the public finances, and they do need to plug this hole, and I'm all for helping them do that because that helps everyone in society. And if we take a step back and look at the macro picture, like the national debt is such a big issue. 8 to 9% of our tax payments just go in servicing that debt. And I think it's very difficult to get the system back into balance when the debt is at the level as it is, which is why I'm absolutely distraught that the government are proposing to recategorize the debt to enable them to borrow more. For me, this is the governmental equivalent of a clever 6-year-old changing the time on the family clock so they can stay up a bit later. A neat sleight of hand, but everyone knows you're going to pay for it the next day. So increasing the debt is the last thing we need at this moment in time. And I think if capital gain tax goes up, the government is going to get less tax income. People are going to leave the UK. People are not going to sell assets, and people are not going to start businesses, which is going to hinder as opposed to help this budget deficit we're facing.
OK, so you accept this problem with the public finances. How does the government raise revenue then, James? I mean, or do they need to? Do they need to then make cuts to public services? As in, how would you plug that gap?
Great question. So for me, capital gains tax is for people starting a business, putting everything on the line for what they believe in and risking their own capital. I think there's far too many people out there abusing the system and they get income taxed as capital gains, which is not what capital gains tax is for. So firstly, I would look to close that gap. And hopefully that goes some way to raising the amount of money we need here. And secondly, we've just got to look at how efficiently we can run our services, how efficiently we can run our country, because it's completely unsustainable for us to continue borrowing more. And if we continue to raise taxes, we take all the incentives out of the system, and we're not going to get the economic growth we need to get us back in an even keel. So
you seem to be, by not talking about it, suggesting that maybe cuts all the way forwards to things like public services. And many people, many voters out there feel that actually public services are in a terrible state and they need investment. And that is why lots of voters would be happy to see various forms of taxation go up.
I agree that public services are in a terrible state. Prisons are putting out dangerous criminals onto the street. Waiting times at the NHS has never been longer. We need to get a better quality of public services for the tax we're paying. My whole point is if we raise CGT, at the end of the day, the government's going to end up with less tax income as opposed to more. People are going to leave, people are going to hold assets as opposed to sell assets, and less people are going to start businesses and create jobs. So the problem that we're facing as a country is an acute one. It's a very difficult one. But I think if you raise capital gains tax, you get less tax income overall, less economic growth overall. So it makes the problem worse as opposed to better.
You talked many times there about people potentially about to leave. Well, we hear this, don't we? And often it's just politics involved when certain governments take over. Wealthy people talk about leaving the country. In the end, though, should that be a concern for a government? And actually, the UK is a good place to live. It's a better place than many other parts of the world. People like being close to home. I'm sure you like living in Scotland. I mean, would you ever consider leaving?
At the moment, I've got no plans to leave, but so many of the brilliant founders, the brilliant entrepreneurs that I know are looking to leave the UK, and these are the people that we need in the UK. We need these amazing minds. We need people who are going to build businesses. We need people who are going to innovate. We need people who are going to build products that we can export as a small island nation and grow our economy by selling things that we make here overseas. So if we lose these people, we've got less industry, less innovation, less disruption, less job creation, less wealth creation in the UK, which is going to result in a negative outcome for every family in the UK. And for me, the guiding principle and what the government's trying to do is...
Where will they move to, though, James, though? That's the big question. I mean, you could point to the United States. We're potentially going to see a big period of political instability in the United States, changes to economic discourse there. Other parts of Europe have got higher levels of taxation than the UK. That's my big question. Where will these entrepreneurs move to? Or do they just become effectively tax havens themselves?
A huge amount of people that I'm speaking to at the moment, especially those in the tech sector, and the tech sector is a sector I fear for the most, because if you're in the tech sector, if you're building with a laptop and a cup of coffee, you can be so mobile. So a lot of these people are speaking about moving to Dubai in the Middle East, and I think that's where we're going to see a large exodus of talent to, should we raise capital gains tax.
OK. I mean, interesting. I mean, clearly, parts of the Middle East have got their problems as well in terms of human rights issues and elsewhere. But we'll deal with that another time. Just while I've got you, James, fascinating discussion. I must ask you about Brewdog as well. Its profits, or it's been certainly a loss, quite a substantial loss over the last year or so. We know that the pub industry is under strain. Do you think that the future's still bright, if you like, for the company that you helped found?
Yeah, absolutely. So this year I stepped down as CEO after 17 and a half years running this amazing business. And if we look at our numbers for last year, we had fantastic growth. So 14% top line revenue growth in a tough market. We continued to take market share. We came incredibly close to making operating profit. We lost 2.5 million at EBITDA. We're positive EBITDA and kind of trending up this year. So we'll post an EBITDA profit this year. And I'm very excited about the prospects for the company and where it's going to go in the future.
James, fascinating stuff. There'll be a lot of people who disagree, but there are a lot of people who will agree with you as well this morning. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. That's James Watt there, the founder of Brewdog, joining us down the line from Scotland. Now, we're going to move to China because its economy has expanded at an annual rate of 4.6% in the July to September quarter, according to new figures released this morning. Those figures came as the UK Foreign Secretary, as you can see, has just arrived in Beijing. These figures just coming in now, saying that he wants to reset relations with the world's second largest economy, indeed the fourth largest trading partner of the United Kingdom. Let's bring in our Asia correspondent, Nicole Johnson, who is in Beijing for us this morning. A very good morning to viewers at home and evening to you. Let's just talk about these GDP figures. 4.6%, many parts of the world will look on at that at envy, if you like. But for China, that is a bit of a slowdown from where it has been over the last year or so.
Absolutely. Having said that, it is close to the mark of what many analysts were predicting. But the Chinese central government is hoping for a target growth rate this year of 5%. So it is under that. They would have preferred, I'm sure, to have seen a higher result than 4.6%. And looking at how the last few quarters have been, if it stays around this level, they won't reach that target of 5%, which is, of course, the last thing that the Chinese central government will want to hear. It has been a fascinating month, actually, for the economy here in China. In September, we had the Chinese central bank introduce a stimulus package, a massive stimulus package. They pumped billions of dollars into the market. It was the biggest stimulus package we had seen in this country since the pandemic. Now, many people were calling it the Beijing bazooka. The jury's still out, though, on whether it's big enough. A lot of the analysis is saying that it isn't. It had a huge impact on the markets, though. In Shanghai, in Shenzhen, we saw the markets rise almost 30%, which is an incredible amount. They then dropped back down. We've had 3 other press conferences since then. At every press conference, the markets have been waiting. The world has been waiting to see how China would back up this initial stimulus package. Most of the analysis has said that the result hasn't gone far enough. But what is this all about? It's all about the real estate market, that massive juggernaut that backed the Chinese economy for years and years on end. Well, it's ground to a halt. We know that there are miles and miles of unfinished real estate projects. And now the Chinese government is trying to turn all of that around. They've changed the lending criteria. They've reduced interest rates. They want to get people back into the real estate market. But it seems that most people at this stage still aren't confident enough. And essentially, that real estate market hasn't really changed.
Yeah, and Nicole, talk about turning things around. Relations with the UK have been pretty strained over the last couple of years, but David Lammy, our Foreign Secretary, our new Foreign Secretary, is in Beijing today trying to reset relations.
Well, let's see whether he manages to reset relations or not. But that does seem to be the direction that they're going in. As you said, it has been a difficult period of tense relations between the UK and China. This government seems to want to have a pragmatic, strategic approach to dealing with China, likely based on business. Why would that be? Well, China is still the UK's 4th largest trading partner. It's super important for the UK. But one of the big questions, though, is how is the UK going to deal with that? Because there are many issues, contentious issues between the UK and China. So trying to balance business with that is something that many countries are finding difficult at the moment. One of the issues, though, about the UK in comparison with Europe and the US is we don't quite know yet what its China policy is. We have seen both Europe and the US come out very strongly against China on its electric vehicle manufacturing, accusing it of overcapacity. China denies that, but as for the UK, we haven't heard what its position is.
OK, Nicole, live there for us in Beijing. Thank you very much indeed, our Beijing correspondent. Let's bring you up to date with some of the rest of the business stories this morning. And UK retail sales grew last month thanks to a boost in people buying tech products. Figures from the Office for National Statistics show that there were a 0.3% rise in September, despite economists previously predicting a fall. But sales were down at supermarkets, with notably fewer luxury food items bought. The US streaming service Netflix has added more than 5 million subscribers in the third quarter, sending the shares up in early trading. Netflix said it was also expected higher consumer growth around Christmas when the Korean drama Squid Game returns. Shares rose 4.5% after closing regular trading down 2%. And the boss of Boohoo is to step down from the online fashion retailer as it launches a strategic review to try and improve trading. John Little has been at the helm for 5 years. His decision comes as the fast fashion retailer also announced another slump in sales and struck a new refinancing deal. Now, there is increasing speculation that as part of the budget, the Chancellor could force UK pension funds to buy more British assets as a way of stimulating investment in British stocks and infrastructure. Joining me now is Philip Hodges. He's co-founder of Guide, a free retirement planning website. On the surface, in many ways, this seems like quite a good idea in the sense that, Philip, there is a lot of money out there. We know the UK needs long-term investment, so why not kind of match up the two, if you like?
Yeah, absolutely. You should, but I mean, there's got to be an actual financial incentive for people to actually do that. On our site, I mean, we have 10,000 people come to Guide to actually plan their retirement, and we often ask them, what is most important to you? We've covered topics like like green investments and things like that. And when you ask people, it's just like, well, what's most important to you? Top of the list is the actual investment returns. So unless the government's going to actually promise the returns that people are going to get, then it's very difficult for them to actually make that decision.
In saying that, Philip, you look at the return of investment when it comes to the different kind of indices across the world. The FTSE 100, for example, is not giving anywhere the same return that the S&P 500 is in the United States. And that's a problem, isn't it, for what the government's trying to achieve? Because ultimately investors, whether the pensioners or not, will always want a greater return.
Absolutely, but of course, with investments, often it's a matter of timing. It's true at the moment. The S&P is actually outperforming the FTSE, but if you actually go back 15 years, the situation was actually reversed. So there's no magic answer, and it is very much about timing. And this is actually very, very critical, particularly to people who are actually approaching their retirement and starting to actually take their money, because the performance of the investment will dramatically affect the income that they can actually achieve in the future.
And Philip, I said at the start, there's been a hell of a lot of speculation over the last week or so about what's going to come up in the budget in 12 days' time. A lot of it, though, has focused on pensions, and there's rumours today about inheritance tax and other things. You're on the front line, if you like, because people are coming to you for advice. What are you seeing with all this speculation just a couple of weeks out? Are people concerned?
Oh, absolutely, they're concerned, and the biggest concern is the amount of uncertainty. That's the worst thing you can do. I mean, and pensions is not something that you play around with just like overnight and make tweaks to it, because people are planning their futures on this. So if you just take the tax-free cash, that there's speculation that they might change that. It's just like, well, there are people at the moment who have planned, are relying on that tax-free cash. And these aren't just like, wealthy people. These are like everyday people who are counting on that and have planned for it. So I think it's a dangerous thing to do. The last time we saw like an immediate change to the pension system was when the Chancellor introduced pension freedoms just about 10 years ago. And you can argue to and against that change. It has actually, meant that people have got greater choice with what they do with their money. But the worst thing you can do at the moment is just make snap decisions. And we've seen this. So some of the people who actually use our software, pension providers, they do have individuals contacting them at the moment, getting ready to quickly withdraw their tax-free cash. And that's not necessarily the best thing to do.
OK, well, we'll have to wait and see what's going to be in the budget. As I say, just 12 days to go. Philip Hodges, thank you very much indeed for joining us there from Wales.
All right, thank you. Thank you.
We're just going to bring you some breaking news coming into us here at Sky News Centre, and that is that an investigation is underway following a fatal collision involving a police car in Eltham. As I say, the police car got involved in a collision, and very sadly, it has led to the death in which a pregnant woman and her baby have died. It happens at around 6:15 last night when an unmarked car was in collision with a member of the public's car on the A20. The London ambulance service, the London Fire Brigade and the air ambulance all attended, and a heavily pregnant woman, aged 38, was in the car, and her unborn baby sadly died of their injuries. The police have said in the last couple of minutes that this is from the Detective Superintendent, saying my heart goes out to the woman's family and friends who've lost their loved ones in these tragic circumstances. The 2 officers in that unmarked car were taken to hospital. They have subsequently been discharged, but clearly an investigation underway in Eltham after a police car was involved in a fatal collision which resulted very sadly in the death of a heavily pregnant woman and her unborn child. We'll have more on that at 12 o'clock here on Sky. We're going to take a quick break on Business Live, though. Coming up in just a couple of minutes, we'll be looking at the markets and how they're doing this morning. FTSE down a tad. We'll have all the details in just a couple of minutes.
I'm James Matthews, and I'm Sky's US correspondent, based here in Washington, D.C.
Do you fear a 4th indictment? Does your government owe an apology to the British home children?
Great to see you.
Does your government owe them an apology?
The fact that they were intercepted, does that indicate a military weakness on the part of Iran?
No.
Free, wherever you get your news. There's no doubting the strength of this hurricane as it roars through. You can feel a devastating power.
It had been a difficult night in a deadly storm.
Bang, bang. You can hear it hitting the windows.
Our houses are okay.
It's depressing.
As bad as all of this is, it could have been much worse.
Today, this land they call sacred is at the heart of America's electric car revolution.
To me, it's a sacred ground.
The white gold rush is a race that Biden doesn't want to lose. I've covered some of the biggest stories in the world. Donald Trump, 45th President of the United States, it would appear is about to learn his fate.
Escort coming out!
San Quentin houses America's largest death row. They rarely allow cameras onto the condemned block.
James Matthews, Sky News.
I want to be treated equally like everyone else.
It's one step closer to getting out, to getting off death row.
Sky News. Get the full story first. Mr. Trump, James Matthews from Sky News.
Hey, James.
You're diminished by claims that you're a racist.
Question?
Mr. Musk, has your ignorance and ego cost Ukrainian lives? Vladimir Putin calls you outstanding. What do you call him, sir?
He's from Sky News. He's entitled to ask me questions.
The most significant day of this conflict. They keep telling us that they want aid. And this is what's left of it.
Tanks, heavy vehicle.
Why only in America?
People want their country to work.
You want to jump in a normal life?
Why are these homes empty?
I want you to be honest with people.
That has happened within minutes.
Sky News, the full story first. Free wherever you get your news.
Traveling is not just about the destination. It's also about how you get there. Fly Emirates, fly better. Fly Emirates, fly better. Thank you.
Welcome back. Let's have a look at the markets. And equities in mainland China and Hong Kong have rebounded after better than expected economic growth. Overall, Asia-Pacific markets have mostly risen today. In Europe, though, markets have also made gains as investors digest yesterday's ECB interest rate cut, as well as fresh economic data and earnings. FTSE 100, though, is down a little, as you can see, just at 0.32% there at the moment. The fall is despite better news from the mining companies who've enjoyed a bounce following data out of China this morning. And let's have a look at the currencies. As you can see, the pound is up a little against both the dollar and the euro this morning. And when it comes to oil, a barrel of Brent crude oil gets $74. They're down a little this morning. Let's bring in Daniela Haythorne. She's senior market analyst at capital.com. Hello, Danielle. Let's start with Netflix, if we can. We talked about them, a little bit earlier, and they seem to still be piling on subscribers.
Yeah, as you said, Netflix delivered all of the key drivers for good performance, beat revenue, beat earnings per share estimates. Current sales are also projected to be better than expected. Their forward guidance is also positive. So really good numbers from Netflix. But as we know, certain industries have niche areas that investors are looking for. And with Netflix, it is subscriber growth. They've beat that as well, adding more than 5 million subscribers in the quarter. And that adds on, of course, to the 8 million that we saw in Q2. So really positive numbers from Netflix. But a lot of those subscribers actually come from the lower band of those paying subscribers. We know that Netflix introduced different price bands in order to attract more consumers, and one of them has ads in order to make it cheaper. And we see that around 50% of the new subscribers are actually in that lower price range. So some interesting figures there. The market hasn't quite been able to capitalize on that positivity just yet. We are still seeing some bearishness in Netflix stocks in the pre-market. But of course, tech stocks have been so strong recently. Sometimes we are struggling to see that correlation play in.
Yeah, FTSE not doing great this morning, but UK miners are.
Yeah, we've seen specifically in the precious metal sector, we've seen gold and silver rebound this week. We're seeing some strong performance there. Of course, there's so many external factors going on, geopolitical tensions, economic data, how that plays into central banks and what to expect in terms of interest rates. That's all affecting gold and silver. And we're also seeing that having a positive effect on the miners in the FTSE 100. Specifically, we're seeing the likes of Fresnillo, Endeavour, Hochschild, they're all up this week. Hochschild up just under 19%, up to a 3.5-year high. So significant growth from them this week.
OK, Daniela, thank you very much indeed for joining us this morning there, Daniela Haythorne. That's it on Business Live from me for the moment. I'm back at 4:30 this afternoon. Stay tuned to Sky News. Matt has the latest news headlines.